Happy Labor Day and welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup.
And I'm Amber Strong. With the 2020 presidential campaign well underway, some lawmakers are sounding the alarm that our election security still faces serious threats.
One of those lawmakers is Senator Mark Warner, who's also the vice chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee. CBN Capitol Hill correspondent Abigail Robertson spoke with him about why he believes our elections are still vulnerable heading into 2020.
Senator Mark Warner is concerned we haven't learned from 2016 when Russia effectively interfered in our election, and he worries about the integrity of our system going into 2020.
The Russians don't favor one party over another. They want to sow chaos, and I think they'll use some new tools in 2020.
We've already seen some of the tech most concerning to Warner. It's known as deep fake technology.
You can computer generate a voice, or you can put the image of your face on another body.
Warner believes each campaign should be extra cautious going into 2020.
I have my personal phone, iPad, screened on a regular basis.
And he says while we've taken some steps to address the problem, it's not enough.
I think we know that Russia didn't really throw all their resources at 2018. They're going to reserve that for the presidential election.
Warner's working to legislatively tackle the issue three ways. First,
there ought to be an obligation that if a foreign government tries to intervene in a presidential election, whoever they try to intervene on behalf of, there ought to be an obligation not to say thank you, but tell the FBI.
Second, Warner believes each voting machine should have a paper ballot backup in case interference is detected.
They do it on both ends of the political spectrum, advocate for the most extreme positions on the left and the right.
And third, he's calling for basic rules forcing Facebook, Twitter, and Google to crack down on fake bots.
Unless we can put some of this in the law to make sure on a going forward basis that we'll take these minimum protections, I'm not sure I can look Americans straight in the eye and say that we'll be fully secure in 2020.
Warner believes this should not be a partisan issue.
I'm not here to try to relitigate 2016.
But he has concerns about the White House's support.
I do worry that, at times the White House has been very reluctant to kind of acknowledge this is a problem. I do get concerned when President Trump interacts with President Putin of Russia and seems to kind of laugh off this issue.
Warner's bills to address election security are picking up bipartisan co-sponsors and support, and he believes they will be broadly supported if they make it to the Senate floor. Reporting from Capitol Hill, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
Thank you, Abigail. Well, we've reported on how the United States has used cyber attacks against Russia and Iran. And while it can be an effective tool, it can also be used against us.
The FBI is busy retooling to meet the security challenges at home. CBN national security correspondent Eric Phillips has more on the depth of the problem and what one so-called cyber range is doing to help.
When the FBI was formed in 1908, there were no cyber crimes because there was no cyber. Only over the last decade has the Bureau taken the potential of cyber attacks seriously. And now, it's a game of catch-up. This is what a cyber attack looks like. A few keystrokes doing more damage than many physical crimes.
Today, it's really all about weaponizing very particular software with the specific goal of trying to extort money from you or take you out of business, just completely eliminate you.
Don Murdoch is with the Institute for Cybersecurity at Regent University in Virginia Beach, Virginia. Through real-life simulations on their cyber range, he trains people from military installations, Fortune 500 companies, and government agencies to become cyber defenders, those who can spot a cyber attack and stop it.
Once you understand how the computer systems work and how the networks work, then you can understand how to co-opt it or misuse it. And once you understand how to detect the difference, then you can learn what the attacker's doing, and then you can learn how to defend it and harden it and make it stronger.
Right now, the sheer number of cyber attacks is outpacing law enforcement's ability to investigate them.
We're probably 5 to 10 years behind in kind of stepping up to this challenge.
Arnold Bell spent 25 years at the FBI. Half of that time he worked in the cyber crimes division. When he joined the division, cybercrime was about 7 or 8 on the priority list. Now it's number 3, just behind terrorism and counterintelligence.
9/11 happens. Obviously, the shift obviously changes the terrorism as it should, and there's a huge focus there. But what's happened now with all the different breaches that you read about every week, it seems like, that has raised the profile of this crime type.
A delayed response, however, means working overtime to update technology, recruit talent, and train agents to investigate cyber attacks.
And the challenges with the Bureau is that, they're competing with private sector, they're competing with all the other federal agencies, and the government pay structure doesn't compete well with private sectors.
They need highly specialized talent that does not grow on trees.
But it is developed in places like this.
When people come to train to be a cyber defender, they're actually using real systems, generating real data, real network traffic. It's not simulated, it's not some two-station lab. It's 15 to 20 network segments and 80 operating systems working together that looks like a small to a medium-sized business.
Murdoch trains defenders to look for system compromises and how to trace them back to the source, a necessary skill for anyone investigating a breach. For the FBI, it's a growing problem with more than 300 identified cyber terror groups worldwide, many of them backed by foreign governments.
Trying to get action and trying to get intelligence and trying to get information out of some of these countries where we don't have really strong connections is a big challenge.
A big challenge for an agency that wasn't even established for this.
The law enforcement is kind of thinking people commit crimes. Well, today, your crimes really can be 25,000 or 50,000 computers that may or may not be owned by an individual. So, leveraging all those computers on behalf of one attacker, that's a much bigger problem.
Murdoch says while much of what he teaches is sophisticated, some of it is just good old common sense security. He calls spear phishing the most common form of attack, and it happens through emails. He says if people would simply be more skeptical of the links they click, that alone would drastically reduce the number of attacks. In Washington, Eric Phillips, CBN News.
Most people seek success through their careers, hoping to achieve the pinnacle of happiness and achievement at work.
Conservative author and columnist David Brooks climbed that mountain, only to find there's a second summit with much greater rewards. CBN's David Brody shares his personal story, which includes a spiritual journey.
On the outside, conservative commentator David Brooks seemed to have it all. New York Times columnist, TV political analyst, and best-selling author. Inside, however, something was missing. In 2013, after 30 years of marriage, divorce rocked his world.
One of the things I learned is when you're in one of those hard moments, you can either be broken or you can be broken open.
For Brooks, it led to soul-searching and renewal that he writes about in his new book, The Second Mountain, The Quest for a Moral Life.
And I think the first mountain is the mountain of career, the one society wants us to climb. And people find it unsatisfying. I achieved way more career success than I ever thought I would. But did I have an all-consuming purpose? Did I have deep connection? No, I didn't. And so you go down the valley, and then when you're in the valley, you find your bigger, larger self, basically. And then you realize you're ready for a larger climb. And if the first mountain is about acquisition, how can I get stuff for me? The second mountain is about contribution. How can I love others?
As a child, he had always heard about God's love. Brooks is Jewish, but also had major Christian influences.
And so I had two stories running through my head. The Jewish story, which is an Exodus story. We cross the wilderness, escape oppression, and come to the land of milk and honey. And then I had the Jesus story. I went to chapel every morning, sang in the choir. And I had those two stories in my head through a lot of my early life.
After his divorce, an attempt at self-discovery led to a personal walk with God in the most unusual place.
I was walking around Penn Station, and it's like the ugliest place on the face of the earth. But I happened to be in one of the subway tunnels, and it occurred to me that everybody around me has a soul, and their soul is either getting sanctified or it's getting degraded. And so once I became aware of that hidden layer, then I realized I'm a faithful person. I'm not, and the way I wanted to describe it is, it wasn't like a blinding revelation. There was no moment of like road to Damascus. It was just this, there was no epiphany.
And then reading the New Testament, especially the book of Matthew, changed his spiritual outlook.
What is that? I remember there was a quote where you said, "I cannot unread Matthew." Yeah. What did you mean by that exactly?
Well, I feel more Jewish than I ever felt before, because I used to be, I just was culturally Jewish, but now I think the covenant is real. But then I'd grown up with this other story, and as I wrote, I can't unread Matthew. And to me, the Beatitudes are, as one person I quote in the book, is where celestial grandeur breaks through. And this person said that the Beatitudes, the Sermon on the Mount, it's not just a bunch of wise sayings. It's a completely remarkable miracle of divine presence.
Since publishing his book, headline writers have wondered, what religion is David Brooks anyway?
Yeah, my joke is I'm a wandering Jew and a confused Christian, but I think, so I have both the stories in my head, but I think my Jewish friends would say I'm a Christian. They say you can't believe in Matthew and you're still Jewish, you've sort of crossed the line. So I guess that's fair, but I always say if they want to get me out of Judaism, they're going to have to kick me out, because I still feel very devoted to those stories and to those characters and to that culture.
Despite a spiritual awakening, don't put Brooks in the evangelicals for Trump camp. Just look at one of his recent columns titled, "Donald Trump Hates America."
I'm not a big fan of Donald Trump. Yeah, definitely not. For his own character and behavior reasons. And so I don't think he exemplifies what I perceive to be the Christian values, but I admit I'm new to this, so.
He believes in today's culture, evangelicals have a greater purpose than just backing Trump.
I always say you shouldn't feel besieged. You have what the country wants. The country is spiritually hungry.
And so was David Brooks, starving for connection with God and with others.
Only 8% of Americans say they have important conversation with their neighbors. 35% of Americans are chronically lonely. The teenage suicide rate has risen by 70% in the last decade or so. And that's just people being cut off from one another.
It's a heavy undertaking, no small task climbing that second mountain.
Where are you in that restoration process?
I'm in the foothills, maybe. I mean, I meet some people who radiate joy, and I'm not quite there yet.
After all of us are a work in progress. David Brody, CBN News, Washington.
When we come back, why the City of Angels is ground zero for the homeless epidemic. Next.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com. Want to be a part of a community that inspires your spiritual growth while winning prizes? The all-new MyCBN app. Connect with the community for prayer and encouragement. Track and set spiritual goals. Enjoy conversation starters with friends and family. And collect points to win prizes. The all-new MyCBN app. A great place to belong. Download the app at cbn.com/mobile. Grow, connect, have fun. The all-new MyCBN app.
Watch breaking news, in-depth exclusive stories and programs, from health to entertainment, you won't find anywhere else. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. Enjoy credible news reporting from around the world. Discover inspiring programs and stories of hope, all in one place, from a Christian perspective. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. Check your local listings or visit cbnnewschannel.com.
Come home to the sounds of Southern Gospel from CBN Radio. You'll enjoy a rich Southern blend of bluegrass, classic gospel, and Southern gospel favorites like the Gaithers, the Crab Family, and bluegrass sounds like Mountain Faith. So make yourself at home with the all-new CBN Southern Gospel, now available at cbnradio.com.
Welcome back. The homeless epidemic is hitting record levels, and with nearly 60,000 people on the streets, Los Angeles is ground zero.
Yeah, many have turned to faith-based groups, but despite their best efforts, more are turning up in need of help. CBN's Ben Kennedy has a story of hope from the City of Angels.
homeless advocates say this is a crisis and are even reaching out to the White House hoping President Trump can help.
What you're seeing is a row of tents.
Those rows make up Skid Row, a 50-block area with the country's largest homeless population that's only continuing to grow.
California is experiencing a massive spike in its rodent population.
Reform California reports this rampant rat infestation has even caused the spread of dangerous diseases like typhus. Dr. Drew Pinsky calls it a health crisis, something he's not seen in this country for 100 years. He even compared downtown LA to a third world country because of its public health problems and lack of sanitation.
Rats have overtaken the city. It's not consistent with civilization. How many must die before we change directions?
In 2019, homeless numbers in LA County rose by 12% to nearly 59,000 people. To top that, a quarter of the country's homeless population live in California.
I have to respond to the systemic failures of our country in helping people like this. And it's not going to be pretty, but it worked.
Officer Dion Joseph has covered life on the skids here for 22 years, helping people like Rose who battle drug addiction for more than a decade.
God bless you, baby.
Thanks to people like Officer Joseph, Rose is now clean.
Now I got keys to my home, baby.
Yes. How does it feel?
It feels good. You can wake up knowing you're gonna wake up and everything's gonna be all right.
Has Rose been an inspiration to many to take the next step?
Rose is an inspiration to me. I don't know how many people she's inspired in the street, but she's an inspiration to me. She's why I keep doing what I do.
Now, success stories like Rose are needed more than ever. Andy, would you consider this to be a crisis?
It is absolute FEMA-like, Red Cross-like, National Guard-like disaster. It is an epidemic of homelessness.
Reverend Andy Bales heads up Union Rescue Mission, the largest homeless shelter and recovery program in the country. Bales' dedication to helping those in need led to the loss of his leg due to a flesh-eating disease he contracted while handing out water to the homeless.
After you lost your leg, did that ever deter you from getting back out there to help people?
No, I actually missed 4 days of work because I had my leg taken off. What will Jesus do miraculously through us today? Without that faith, we couldn't do what we do.
For many on Skid Row, the missions here are the only hope of growing out of poverty.
We've been here for 25 years in the neighborhood. We've never left.
Reverend Matthew Barnett's Dream Center is a Skid Row mainstay, helping those facing abuse, addiction, and poverty.
I think the goal is to try to get people out of survival mindset because people get desperate when they're trying to survive.
Survival for this part of East Central LA may depend on changing laws in D.C.
Let's change laws and make it easier for their loved ones to gain conservatorships over them and take control of their lives so they're not in crisis or walking down the streets of Skid Row.
Now, the LA Homeless Services Authorities report that women and children make up 40% of the homeless population. One more reason why Officer Joseph says more shelters are needed to help families, kids, and the elderly. Ben Kennedy, CBN News, Los Angeles.
Coming up, the Army goes rolling along and into its first National Museum. That story when we come back.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the
Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
Administering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to cbnnewschannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News.
The U.S. Army is the only military branch without its own national museum.
Yet in 2020, that is set to change. The future capstone in the Army is still under construction on a hill in nearby Fort Belvoir, Virginia. That's where we find our Gabe LaMonica for this preview.
When it opens, the steel fortress behind me is going to be the Army's first national museum. It's been a long time coming, but the Army took us inside for a sneak peek. The big reveal of the U.S. Army emblem on the lobby floor comes some 2 years after installing the final steel beam, and some 200 years after the 13th U.S. Congress authorized a national museum for the Army.
We are the last service to have its own national museum.
It took a lot of heavy lifting to move in everything from this Cobra King battle tank, the first in Bastogne 38-ton legend that broke the German lines during World War II's Battle of the Bulge, to this M3 Bradley fighting vehicle that led the charge in the 2003 invasion of Baghdad. All before suspending this Vietnam-era UH-1 Huey from the ceiling and bringing in hundreds of artifacts in between. Now, the oldest branch of the U.S. military is rolling along and into a 185,000 square foot glass and steel citadel above 84 acres some 20 miles south of the nation's capital.
It represents a beacon, again, the strength of the Army, the safety of the Army, and that's how we protect our citizens as well.
Tammy Call is the museum director.
We tell the Army's story, the comprehensive story, through the eyes and voices of our individual soldiers.
One of those voices belonging to the late Melvin Nestaby, who survived the Bataan Death March during World War II.
I will always be a soldier.
Hundreds of American soldiers died when the Japanese Army beat and tortured prisoners of war during a forced march of more than 60 miles.
A well of water springing up into everlasting life.
Nestaby's New Testament Pocket Bible is just one of over 7.4 million copies issued to American GIs during World War II.
Lack of water or starving, this helped them through that time.
And this good book carried Nestaby past the perils of murder and disease over the course of 4 POW camps in 3.5 years.
He carried that with him throughout the duration of the war.
Paul Mirando is the chief of exhibits.
He gave his life, his service to the United States Army, and his story, along with this Bible, needs to be told.
The museum will cover the history of the Army from the Revolutionary War to the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. The Army says that after over 240 years, this testament to its service and its soldiers is long overdue. Gabe LaMonica, CBN News, Fort Belvoir, Virginia.
When we come back, how the greatest story ever told is stacking up to be a mile long. Next.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
Well, this summer, the so-called wall of separation of church and state came crumbling down on the National Mall when the entire Bible was on display.
But it wasn't just words on pages. It was the unique vision of a German painter spread across more than 3,000 pieces of art. CBN News' Paul Strand has the story.
Imagine every single part of the Bible illustrated by a professional painter, and then all those paintings lined up next to each other and going all the way around the reflecting pool on the National Mall.
They say a picture's worth 1,000 words. Well, so then what are 3,333 pictures worth? In this case, the entire Bible.
German painter Willy Wiedmann put many years of his life into this project. The head of the Museum of the Bible was excited to see it all displayed at once.
It's the world's longest Bible, arguably the world's longest illustrated book. And this is a chance for us to show it off to the district and to the nation.
The painter's son came all the way from Germany for the mile-long display and to represent his father's vision.
There are more than 1 billion people illiterate, people who can't read and write, and that's one way for them to engage with the Bible through visuals.
He believed that about 1/3 of the world's population either couldn't read or couldn't learn through words. They had to learn pictorially. And that was his motivation to spend 16 years of his life to create this amazing Bible.
The world might never have seen this treasure. The painter didn't even tell his own family about it.
It was a total surprise when I discovered it.
It was Martin and his family who discovered all the work their father had done.
Well, he put it away in 4 big aluminum cases, which I found after he died in his attic.
Wiedmann borrowed from many schools of art: surrealism, cubism, abstract expressionism. It led to a whole different look for biblical subjects.
He never wanted God to have a face or a gender, and so God is always represented as a triangle coming from the top of the page.
We're used to thinking of Jesus looking a certain way from all those Renaissance paintings. Wiedmann definitely had a style of his own. Like here's Jesus washing his disciples' feet and at the Last Supper.
Jesus is always represented with this crazy blonde hair. Don't know why.
But no matter how people felt about the style, it was one massive biblical wonder to behold.
To have a mile-long picture around the reflecting pool in form of a Bible, I mean, this is unheard of.
Paul Strand, CBN News, the National Mall.
That's going to do it for tonight's Faith Nation.
We'll see you right back here tomorrow.